Welcome. Today we're undertaking a detailed exploration of a phenomenon that, well, it isn't rooted in ancient myth or some kind of established history.
No, not at all.
It's a fictional character born just over a decade ago, really, in the most modern of circumstances, the digital world.
Right on the internet.
Yet this figure, it transitioned so rapidly from just a niche online horror meme to the centerpiece of a horrific real-world tragedy.
It's an incredible and frankly, very sobering trajectory.
We are exploring the genesis and the consequences of the Slender Man legend.
Our mission today is to meticulously trace the complete life cycle of this character. We really need to begin at that precise, unique moment of its creation online.
The very beginning.
Yes, and then follow its explosive, very collaborative evolution into what you could call a form of modern digital folklore.
And then the most critical part.
And then most critically, we have to analyze the serious legal, moral, and cultural fallout that occurred when this pure fantasy just tragically collided with reality.
A collision that's primarily defined by the devastating 2014 Waukesha stabbing.
That's the moment everything changed.
Absolutely. So, to start, we really have to establish the character's profile because its visual and narrative simplicity is, well, it's arguably the key to its immense and immediate success.
It really is.
The Slender Man is consistently depicted as this unnaturally tall, almost impossibly thin humanoid figure.
Right. The proportions are all wrong.
Exactly. And he has this stark, featureless white head and face, a frightening blank slate, and he wears a formal, dark, often black suit. It gives him this uncanny, unsettling appearance of formality amidst the horror.
And this character, it quickly gathered a whole lexicon around him. Within the growing community, he had all these aliases, Slendy, Slender, or just Slender Man.
It became shorthand.
Yes. But what is truly exceptional about this figure is that fundamental shift in his narrative identity that starts in 2014. Before then, he was entertainment, a scary story.
Just a piece of fiction.
Right. But after, he became associated with genuine danger and real-world fear.
That year, 2014, it marked the onset of this profound nationwide moral panic. It all began when readers and consumers of this specific online fiction were connected to several violent acts.
And the most devastating example, the one that fundamentally changed the character forever, was the near-fatal stabbing of a 12-year-old girl in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
An event that didn't just make headlines, it forced the world to confront the very real-world impact of collaborative, user-generated digital fiction.
So let's look closer at the origin story, because this is where the character's unique nature really reveals itself.
It's truly remarkable.
It is. For a figure who acquired the patina of, a centuries-old urban legend almost overnight, we can pinpoint his exact date and birthplace.
Right. Which is so unusual for folklore. He wasn't discovered in an old manuscript or whispered about in a shadowy town square.
No.
He was born in a Photoshop contest on a very specific internet forum called Something Awful. This was a playground for users focused on, playful dark humor and image manipulation.
That's exactly right. The date was June 10th, 2009, and the contest thread was titled, Create Paranormal Images.
So the goal was explicit from the start.
The challenge was for users to manipulate existing photographs to make them look unsettlingly realistic, blurring that line between known reality and fictional horror. The goal was to generate convincing fakes.
And the person credited with this pivotal creation is Eric Knudsen, who posted under the pseudonym Victor Surge.
Right.
His initial contribution was incredibly minimal, but it was just perfectly executed. He submitted 2 manipulated black and white photographs, both featuring groups of children.
With this figure in the background.
With this incredibly tall, spectrally thin figure, edited subtly, almost hidden in the background.
But the real masterstroke, the thing that immediately gave the image narrative weight, was that Knudsen didn't just post the pictures. That was key.
No, he didn't.
Instantly transformed them into fiction by adding these descriptive text snippets, carefully presenting them as if they were genuine archival evidence.
Like excerpts pulled from official documents or historical witness accounts.
Exactly. And this subtle move instantly supplied the character with a fictional, historical context.
Yeah.
It made it feel real.
That is the narrative engine right there. If he had just posted the picture, it would have been a cool photo manipulation, and that's it.
It would have been forgotten in a day.
But adding the text, that made it lore. One of those quotes, supposedly dating from 1983, it describes the figure's persistent silence and outstretched arms that horrified and comforted us at the same time.
That one phrase, It's so powerful. It encapsulates the complexity. He's both a terror and something strangely magnetic.
It draws you in.
And the second quote, dated 1986, connected the figure directly to tragedy. It stated that the vanishing of 14 children was linked to the sighting of the Slender Man, and it noted a subsequent library fire.
So right away, he's tied to missing children and destruction.
By attributing the image to a supposed history of tragedy and mysterious disappearances, Knudsen successfully made a 4-day-old internet creation feel ancient and established.
What's so fascinating here is how deliberate Knudsen was in modeling this entity. He was modeling it after classic horror tropes and existing folklore figures.
Oh, absolutely.
He didn't just stumble into this creation, he was synthesizing decades of horror tradition.
He cited a very broad, very specific range of inspirations. This was not accidental. He mentioned Zach Parsons' That Insidious Beast, the atmosphere of dread created by Stephen King.
Specifically, the Mist.
Specifically, The Mist. And he drew from traditional American folklore figures like shadow people, the bizarre sightings of Mothman, and the historical urban legend of the Mad Gasser of Mattoon.
And I think the cinematic and gaming inspirations are just as important. They relate directly to the visual element, the atmosphere that fans later amplified so much.
They do.
He cited the towering, uncanny presence of the tall man from the 1979 film Phantasm.
A classic.
And the deeply unsettling surrealism you find in the writings of H.P. Lovecraft, and that constant sense of vulnerability and paranoia that defines survival horror games.
Like Silent Hill and Resident Evil.
Exactly.
This specific combination, mixing the vague historical fear of something like the Mothman with the high-concept visual terror of a Silent Hill creature, it created the perfect template for the digital age.
It was familiar enough to be frightening,
but vague enough to be adapted by anyone.
And his stated intention really confirms that deliberate choice of ambiguity. Knudsen said his goal was, and I'm quoting here, to formulate something whose motivations can barely be comprehended and which caused unease and terror in a general population.
He built in a blank space. He built it specifically so that the community could fill it with their own worst fears.
That ambiguity is the secret sauce. It's what allowed the character to so quickly transition into genuine mythology, which is why academic studies followed so quickly.
They did. Professor Shira Chess of the University of Georgia, she immediately drew comparisons between the Slender Man and, of all things, ancient folklore about fairies.
That sounds contradictory, doesn't it? A modern figure in a black suit being compared to a mischievous woodland spirit.
It does at first, but not at all when you actually look at the narrative patterns. The parallels are, well, they're compelling.
So what are they?
Both the Slender Man and the folklore fairfolk are presented as otherworldly entities. Their motives are consistently difficult, if not impossible, to grasp. They just don't act like humans.
Right. There's no human logic to them.
None. Their appearance is often vague, it shifts, or it depends entirely on the observer's perception. And crucially, both are strongly associated with living in wild, untamed places like the deep woods.
And both are notoriously linked to the kidnapping or luring away of children.
Exactly. This analysis confirmed that Slender Man had rapidly become a legitimate mythological figure, albeit one that was created by consensus on a message board.
So with that origin established, a very specific, very deliberate creation, the key to the character's longevity is how quickly this isolated creature just took flight across the broader internet.
It was almost instantaneous.
The period from, say, 2009 to 2013, that's when he migrated from the Something Awful forum into the vast world of Creepypasta.
And Creepypasta, those short, easily copyable text snippets of horror fiction. It was the perfect medium for him. The essence of this evolution was the constant, deliberate fluidity of the character's description and his powers.
We established that there was no official canon, and that lack of centralized control was, well, it was its superpower, really.
Absolutely. Since Eric Knudsen didn't enforce strict rules or a single narrative, the character's appearance, his motives, habits, abilities, they were constantly changed, adapted, and built upon by countless storytellers across so many different platforms.
It was a completely collaborative mythos developing in real time.
And that collaboration helped solidify some key physical attributes. While the featureless face and the black suit remained, storytellers standardized the idea that he was capable of extending his limbs.
So he was seen as unnaturally long and thin, and then later the concept of the tentacle-like arms.
Or appendages emerging from his back.
Right, that became a ubiquitous visual trope used to capture or intimidate his prey.
And a crucial part of the lore that emerged was the effect of simply being near him. This gave rise to the idea of the slender sickness.
This wasn't just fear, it was something physical.
Right, it was a rapid, intense physical and psychological breakdown.
The symptoms included severe paranoia, debilitating nightmares, visual and auditory delusions.
And specific physical symptoms, like nausea and unexplained nosebleeds. The sickness. It functioned as a narrative device to explain why the characters in the stories were unreliable narrators, which just added another layer of unsettling ambiguity.
The targeting also evolved, didn't it? While early stories focused on children or young adults, later tales explored the idea that the Slender Man didn't just capture people,
He drove them insane. He twisted their minds so that they would act violently on his behalf.
which leads directly to the critical development of proxies.
And the concept of the proxy, along with the most recognizable symbols, they were largely crystallized and popularized by one highly influential piece of media, the web series Marble Hornets.
That show was transformative for the lore, just a game changer.
It really was. Marble Hornets ran from 2009 to 2014, and it was a masterpiece of digital storytelling. It actually started as a post on that original Something Awful thread.
And grew into this complex, alternate reality game.
Exactly, produced in a found footage style and published on YouTube. It documented the fictional experiences of a character named Alex Crowley and the user Tilthark, who were being harassed by the Slender Man, or, as they called him, the Operator.
The series solidified that proxy concept humans who fall directly under the operator's influence. The early portrayal was that they were violently insane individuals,
But later they were viewed more as controlled puppets, completely incapable of free will.
which gave Slender Man the ability to be everywhere and act through human agents, a common trope in classic possession and horror narratives.
And it also established two other major tropes that became iconic. First, the idea that the entity could interfere directly with technology,
Causing video and audio recordings to corrupt, to static out, or glitch whenever he was near.
which made the medium of the story itself unreliable. You couldn't trust what you were seeing.
And second, it gave the figure his defining visual marker, the Slender Man symbol.
The circle with an X through it.
This simple symbol became shorthand for the entire mythology, allowing fans to instantly recognize the horror in a really subtle way.
The pace of its spread into viral media was just exponential. The success of Marble Hornets proved there was this intense global appetite for this kind of evolving narrative.
I mean, by 2013, the series had accumulated over 250,000 subscribers and 55 million views. This was not niche content anymore.
No, it was a global storytelling phenomenon.
Hmm.
And this demand translated almost immediately into other media formats, which broadened the audience even further.
The most significant shift, I think, came in 2012 with the release of the video game Slender, the 8 pages.
Oh, that game was instantly viral. It achieved such immediate, overwhelming success that its official website actually crashed.
Crashed because too many people worldwide were trying to download the free horror game at the same time.
And the game played directly on the established lore. Wandering alone in the woods, that sense of constant, unsettling observation, and the collection of 8 pages before the creature got you. It was pure terror fueled by digital anxiety.
It was quickly followed by its commercial sequel in 2013's Slender, The Arrival.
So the character had now leaped from collaborative fan fiction and found footage experiments into mass-market entertainment.
And the character's design became so recognizable that it inspired elements in mainstream media that had nothing to do with horror.
Like Minecraft.
The massively popular game Minecraft introduced a hostile mob known as the Enderman, a tall, thin, black figure that teleports and avoids eye contact. This was a clear nod to the Slender Man.
It showed just how deeply embedded the visual idea had become.
Independent film adaptations also began immediately, eventually leading to the feature film Always Watching, a Marble Hornets story in 2015.
Now we
Yeah.
have to turn our attention to the critical point in this character's history. The moment when the fictional menace resulted in genuine, heartbreaking violence.
The Waukesha tragedy in 2014.
This collision of fantasy and reality is the defining, painful event in the Slender Man narrative.
And it is absolutely essential that we approach this segment with gravity and sympathy, focusing specifically on the factual consequences for the victim and the profound legal implications of the perpetrator's delusion.
The violent act occurred on May 31st, 2014 in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
2 12-year-old girls lured a 12-year-old classmate into a wooded area, held her down, and stabbed her 19 times.
The attack was premeditated and just devastatingly severe. It was designed to be fatal.
We have to emphasize the victim's incredible fight for survival. Despite her extreme injuries, despite being left for dead, she somehow managed to crawl out of the woods to a roadway.
Where she was spotted by a passing cyclist who immediately called for help.
She survived the attack only through her sheer will and the timely intervention of a stranger. It's just incredible.
When they were questioned by authorities, the motives presented by the perpetrators were horrifyingly and directly tied to the Slender Man mythology they had been obsessively consuming online.
They explicitly stated their goal was to commit murder as a first step, a test, really, to become Slender Man's proxies.
This wasn't just a casual interest in a horror story. Their actions were driven by intense, paralyzing fear.
They claimed to the police that they genuinely believed Slender Man was real, that he was watching them, and that he would kill their families if they failed to successfully commit the murder.
The boundary between their internal fantasy world and external reality had completely collapsed.
The level of delusion was astonishing, particularly in the testimony of one of the girls. She told authorities that Slender Man watched her, that he could read minds, and that he could teleport.
And experts testified in court that her delusion went even further. She claimed to converse regularly with other fictional entities,
Including the Harry Potter villain Lord Voldemort and even one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
It just shows a mind completely subsumed by these layers and layers of fantasy.
The legal process that followed was complex. It drew international attention because of the ages of the perpetrators and the nature of the crime.
And despite subsequent diagnoses of severe mental illnesses for both girls, Wisconsin authorities charged them as sane adults.
Which meant they faced potential sentences of up to 65 years in adult prison.
That decision to try 12-year-olds as adults was a significant cultural shock. It immediately raised questions about the justice system's ability to handle cases where severe delusion is fueled by pop culture.
An initial finding that one girl was incompetent to stand trial was later overturned in December 2014.
Which solidified the decision to try them separately as adults in criminal court.
In 2017, Anissa Weir, one of the perpetrators, she pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree homicide. However, the jury determined she was indeed mentally ill at the time of the attack.
So she was sentenced to 25 years in a mental hospital, a commitment that would run until she reached the age of 37. She was eventually granted supervised release in 2021.
Morgan Geyser, the second perpetrator, pleaded guilty in 2018 to attempting to commit first-degree homicide. This was in an arrangement that allowed her to avoid a mandatory jail sentence.
And she received the maximum sentence allowed under the law. 40 years committed to a mental hospital. Her potential supervised release date is set for 2025.
This legal outcome really emphasizes the struggle the justice system faced in balancing the horrific nature of the crime with the clear evidence of severe, media-induced delusion and mental illness in children.
It's also essential to acknowledge the response from the character's creator, Eric Knudsen.
Yes.
In an official statement released in June 2014, shortly after the incident, he expressed profound sadness. He said, "I am deeply saddened by the tragedy in Wisconsin, and my heart goes out to the families of those affected by this terrible act."
And after that, he largely withdrew from publicly commenting on the matter, acknowledging the devastating, unintended impact his original creation had caused.
So following the Waukesha stabbing, the cultural response was immediate and immense. It ignited a serious nationwide moral panic across the United States.
This was a fear not just of a creature, but of the media landscape itself.
That's a great way to put it.
Parents quickly grew worried, often profoundly concerned, about the nature of the online horror stories their children were consuming, specifically that creepypasta genre which so fluidly blurred the lines between fantasy and documented reality.
And the reaction of Waukesha Police Chief Russell Jack, it really captured the tone of the panic perfectly.
He issued a widely publicized warning, stating that the incident should be a wake-up call for all parents about monitoring their children's online activity.
Because, as he put it, the internet is full of dark and wicked things. The media amplified this message, turning the Slender Man into a convenient modern scapegoat for the perceived dangers of uncontrolled digital consumption.
And this panic was just intensified by reports of other alleged cases where the Slender Man influence was cited, reinforcing this idea that this was an epidemic of media-induced violence.
For instance, just weeks after the Waukesha incident, in June 2014 in Cincinnati, Ohio, a mother told a reporter that her 13-year-old daughter had attacked her with a knife.
And the mother directly linked the assault to the Slender Man fiction the daughter had been reading and writing.
Another deeply troubling case occurred in Port Richey, Florida, in September of that same year. A 14-year-old girl allegedly set her family's house on fire while her mother and 9-year-old brother were inside.
And while police cited multiple influences, including the manga Soul Eater, reports specifically mentioned her reading of Slender Man's stories.
Officials stated that due to her documented visits to related websites It would be safe to say there is a connection to that.
It's important to note, too, that the character's influence was felt even in areas of deep cultural pain that weren't directly linked to violence against others.
Right, like on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in early 2015.
Exactly. During an epidemic of youth suicide attempts there, involving young people ages 12 to 24, the Slender Man was cited as an influence.
And this specific instance highlights the complex mechanism of folklore merging with modern media. The Oglala Sioux tribe president noted that many Native Americans traditionally believe in a suicide spirit, or a traditional figure known as the big man, associated with danger and warnings.
And some believe that Slender Man was either influencing youth or mimicking this traditional figure.
Yes, using the modern horror trope to manifest an existing cultural fear. Other tribal members saw the big man emerging in this new form as a warning that society itself was developing in a dangerous, uncontrolled direction.
The overwhelming negative media attention that resulted from the Waukesha tragedy, it altered the entire narrative surrounding the character. It ceased being a fun, collaborative horror project.
It became a serious, sensitive topic, and this led to a sharp, visible decline in the character's original widespread popularity. Many dedicated Slender Man blogs either shut down or saw their activity significantly reduced. The community recoiled from the association with real-world violence.
But the narrative didn't entirely die. By the late 2010s, a surprising new trend emerged within the remaining fan community,
The benevolent portrayal of the Slender Man.
which sounds completely counterintuitive after everything we've just discussed. How does a figure associated with kidnapping children and attempted murder suddenly become a good guy?
It seems to be a conscious effort by storytellers to reclaim the figure, to repair the narrative damage caused by the Waukesha incident.
So in these later narratives, he was often recast as an anti-hero or a protector.
Exactly. He was shown protecting victimized children from bullies, though, characteristically, the means he employed were often brutally violent and extreme.
So he was protecting children by horrifyingly punishing their tormentors.
Right. And part of this narrative reclamation included introducing subsidiary characters like his supposed daughter, Skinny Sally.
Who is she?
She is typically portrayed as a young girl covered in cuts and bruises, whom the Slender Man carries protectively on his shoulders. She's essentially a visual representation of childhood trauma, and he is her fiercely protective guardian.
Folklorist Lynn McNeil suggests that this trend toward a more protective or benevolent Slender Man was a direct cultural reaction by the character's fans to the extreme, devastating violence of the Waukesha stabbing.
It was a way for the community to distance the fiction they loved from the tragedy it inspired, giving the entity a new, albeit dark, moral purpose.
Despite the tragedy, the moral panic, and the subsequent change in the character's perception, commercialization continued.
Did. The 2016 HBO documentary Beware the Slender Man addressed the incident sensitively, but the most controversial effort was the 2018 theatrical film Slender Man.
And that film was immediately met with accusations that the filmmakers were crassly capitalizing on the real-life tragedy for profit.
Bill Weir, the father of Anissa Weir, one of the perpetrators, he publicly denounced the movie.
His statement was very powerful. He argued that making the movie was absurd and would only extend the pain all three of these families have gone through.
The cultural debate around media exploitation was fierce. It raised serious ethical questions about drawing entertainment from recent profound tragedy.
And the studio, Sony, they maintained that the film was based only on the fictional character popularized online, not on the specific Waukesha incident.
But despite receiving overwhelmingly negative critical reviews and poor domestic performance, the film did eventually gross several times its $10 million budget worldwide. Its legacy, though, remains firmly tied to the controversy over commercializing genuine suffering.
Let's shift our focus now to the academic view of Slender Man, which is, well, arguably the most fascinating part of his story. Scholars have elevated him beyond just a horror meme.
Oh, absolutely. They analyze him as a critical example of modern legal and sociological phenomena. The scholarly consensus frames him as a pure form of digital folklore.
Despite the paradox that we know his exact origin point.
And that's the powerful paradox, isn't it? It's why Slender Man is now a textbook case study. Traditional folklore usually evolves over centuries, with origins lost to time or communal memory.
But here, we have a character born on a specific date in a specific forum thread that still manages to exhibit all the core characteristics of a traditional evolving folk tale.
So how is that possible? If we can trace it back to Eric Knudsen, why call it folklore?
Because of the collaborative nature of the internet. The authorship quickly ceased being singular. Shira Chess argues that Slender Man's unique success is in demonstrating how quickly the open-source, collaborative ethos of the internet can replicate the conditions necessary for traditional mythology to develop.
Chess identifies three key aspects that firmly tie Slender Man to traditional folklore, moving past the known creator. The first is collectivity.
Meaning, the character's narrative and visual identity wasn't maintained by Knudsen alone. It was created, developed, and propelled by a collective group of thousands of users who all added new layers to the myth.
The second is variability. Traditional myths change depending on the teller, the region, the era. Slender Man is exactly the same. The story and the character's attributes change significantly depending on who is telling the tale or what medium it appears in.
We saw that in the evolution of his powers, his motives, or that eventual shift to benevolence. He's a narrative chameleon.
And the third aspect is performance. Folklore is dynamic. It changes to reflect the audience's response. With Slender Man, storytellers adapt the lore based on what currently frightens or interests their community at that precise moment.
That shift to a protective father figure is a perfect example of this performance responding to audience need after the tragedy.
Exactly. And media scholar and folklorist Andrew Peck attributes the character's success entirely to this highly collaborative nature, specifically emphasizing the value of his ambiguity.
Since the character's motives and background were deliberately vague and shrouded in mystery, users found it incredibly easy to adapt existing Slender Man tropes and imagery to create new stories.
This rapid, shared adaptation fosters a communal sense of ownership, exactly like an ancient oral legend.
This inherent ambiguity is also why the fear resonates so deeply and why scholars have interpreted the figure as a metaphor for modern societal anxieties. What is it about this specific character that speaks to 21st century fear?
Well, Shira Chess, for example, she views Slender Man as a representation of helplessness, power differentials, and anonymous forces.
He's the perfect symbol for things we know are watching us but cannot identify or control, like corporate surveillance, network data mining, or faceless bureaucracy.
He is the ultimate anonymous power structure. The classic monster is physical, a werewolf or a vampire. The Slender Man is abstract and formal, yet predatory.
Exactly. And Andrew Peck sees parallels with the anxieties of the digital age itself.
Right. He personifies that feeling of constant connectedness and the unsettling sense of unknown third-party observation. The idea that something or someone is always watching you through the network, but you can't look away and you can't log off.
Writer Ty Van Horn suggested a different angle. He argued that Slender Man represents the modern fear of the unknown. We live in an information-saturated age where every piece of data is supposedly at our fingertips.
We are so unaccustomed to true ignorance that we fear what we cannot immediately understand or categorize. Slender Man, with his blank face and unknowable motives, is the ultimate information vacuum.
Folklorist Jeffrey Tolbert introduced a very interesting conceptual term for this phenomenon: reverse ostension.
Okay, so ostension traditionally means acting out a folk narrative. Someone hears an urban legend and then goes out and performs the actions of the legend, making it real.
So if that's ostension, what is reverse ostension?
Slender Man is doing the reverse. It is the act of deliberately creating a set of folklore-like narratives where none existed, intentionally modeling itself after an established folklore genre.
It's like building a synthetic antiquity.
That's a great way to put it. We know precisely when and where it was designed, but the collective effort immediately makes it feel like it's been around for generations. It's an iconic figure deliberately produced through collaborative design.
That's a powerful idea, that the internet allows us to instantly create something that replicates the structural weight of the ancient past.
And that connects directly to Thomas Pettit's analysis, who describes Slender Man as a prime example of the closing of what he calls the Gutenberg parenthesis.
The Gutenberg parenthesis? That refers to the age that began with the invention of the printing press, right?
And arguably ended with the rise of the internet. During this 500-year period, stories were codified, fixed, discrete. They were bound in printed books. They had a beginning, middle, and end that couldn't easily be altered by the reader.
And the internet breaks that fixity.
Precisely. Slender Man signals a return to older, primal forms of storytelling, like oral traditions and campfire tales, where the narrative is constantly reinterpreted and recast by different tellers. It allows the lore to expand and evolve rapidly and fluidly, exactly as it did for centuries before the printing press. The internet, paradoxically, has moved us back toward collaborative, fluid storytelling traditions.
But despite all these academic qualities that make Slender Man sound like a modern bogeyman belonging to the public domain, a myth owned by the collective, he is definitively not in the public domain.
No, and that creates a very interesting legal complexity.
It does. Eric Nunson remains the character's creator, but the legal structure is complicated.
While Knudsen has approved many fan projects and amateur works, the rights for major commercial adaptations, like film and television, are held by an unidentified third party.
And this legal framework has led to conflicts, notably including a Kickstarter-funded film that was blocked from distribution due to legal complaints regarding the rights holder.
It seems like a constant tension between the community ownership that defines digital folklore and the legal mechanisms that protect intellectual property.
And for Knudsen, the issue of copyright enforcement was reportedly less about financial gain and more about protecting the character's artistic integrity and tone.
He stated publicly, "I just want something amazing to come off it, something that's scary and disturbing and kind of different. I would hate for something to come out and just be kind of conventional."
It shows his concern was maintaining the unique, dark nature of his original creation, even years later.
Before we close out, it is worth a quick summary of how quickly and thoroughly the mainstream entertainment world sought to either parody or capitalize on this character's popularity.
Which just confirms his status as an instant icon outside of the horror genre.
Slender Man quickly became the recognizable shorthand for internet horror and the digital uncanny. As we mentioned, his influence was direct in games like Minecraft.
The hostile mob called the Enderman, introduced in 2011, took direct visual inspiration from the Slender Man's design and movement.
In television, the concept was adapted repeatedly, often folding his lore into pre-existing fictional universes. A 2013 episode of the show Lost Girl, for instance, actually used the Slender Man as a key plot point.
And made the surprising claim that he was the historical basis for the classic Pied Piper legend.
And inevitably, once a concept becomes popular enough to generate serious fear, it quickly becomes popular enough to be parodied.
The 2014 episode of the long-running horror series Supernatural featured a clear, acknowledged parody of the Slender Man, which they named Thin Man, playing on the core visual attribute.
But perhaps the most culturally significant adaptation was not a parody or a horror tribute. It was an episode of the crime drama series Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, that same year.
Their episode, titled Glasgowman's Wrath, was directly and explicitly inspired by the actual Slender Man stabbings in Waukesha.
It showed just how quickly the real-world tragedy filtered into mainstream social commentary and fictionalized crime narratives. This cemented the figure's status as a tragic cultural marker.
So if we look at this character's entire journey, from a 4-day-old photo contest thread to a figure cited in court documents regarding attempted murder, and now studied in academic papers as a textbook example of modern myth formation.
It is truly unique in the history of folklore.
The speed at which this digital mythology formed, evolved, achieved consensus belief, and then crossed the boundary to tragically impact reality is just astounding. It raises profound and complex questions about the nature of shared, networked narratives.
Ultimately, the question we are left with for you to reflect upon is this. As networked communication continues to grow and shared narratives achieve consensus and belief almost instantly online, what is the inherent, unavoidable responsibility of collaborative storytellers when their entirely fictional creations step off the screen and influence real-world, sometimes devastating actions?
Thank you for engaging with this detailed exploration of the source material.
Thanks for listening.